All right, so pleasant good after evening again, everyone, and welcome to our course. Welcome to all that we're doing. That is amazing. As I said before, I want to put this on the record for the recording. I really want to say congratulations on the level and the kind of work that I saw in the Dropbox yesterday. I know many of you haven't put in your work as yet. We'll see, because I'm going to be we're going to be looking at them this week, and you'll get that feedback quite soon. Also, something very important I want for the recording is your assignment 1, which is all the participation work, all the discussions, all of that, remember, is assignment 1. Your participation, which is out of 30%, that grade you'll also get quite soon, because we're going through that. You have one more major activity to do online, and then we'll be submitting all of that. All right. So if you notice, there are no grade attached to them, or I put 5%, but that's not it. We're not going to grade them individually. You know that already. You'll have one good grade placed beside your name in the Dropbox for that assignment. Let's get into today's discussion. So today's discussion, what I want to do is we want to get into the discussion talking about creating, fostering, and sustaining intentional spaces of belonging. One of the issues we talked about while we were having our amazing first and second class, if you missed those 2 classes, you missed a lot, because those 2 classes, I remember we talked about the issues in Black education. And I remember I shared with you that I was kind of, wondering if I was going to have a group of students who were going to understand the issues. And if even they don't understand the issue, but they are aware of the issues. And I told you before, I've said it many times before, I was pleasantly surprised when we walked into the course, and to see how intentional you were for that first discussion. I can truly say for that first discussion, how amazing, how excellent your work were, how people were engaged, people were very, very, very aware of those issues. One of those major issues, as we talk about introduction to anti-Black racism, we talk about issues within school. One of those major issues is many of our students do not feel a sense of belonging. They don't feel school is created for them. They have been pushed out and marginalized and excluded, and all the different issues you see happening. And so one of the biggest things we want to talk about is creating, fostering, and sustaining intentional space of belonging, right? As for racialized students, for Black students. And so we're going to get into this conversation. So I made this quote it was 2020, during the George Floyd incident and a lot of discussion. And I did a podcast for the Simcoe County District School Board. And I made the statement that too many of our students are made to feel like they are strangers in schools, as if they are interrupting something. Let students feel that the classroom is theirs. There are many reasons why our students may feel like the classroom is not theirs, or they do not belong. So let me ask you to do me a quick favor. Let me see how much of you are on the ball. Jump in the chat, everybody. Everybody jump in the chat. Jump right in the chat for me. And I want you to share a reason why you think Black students would not feel a sense of belonging. Share that reason why you think Black students would not feel that the sense of belonging. Racialized students would not feel that the sense of belonging. If you have had the opportunity, not opportunity, that's a ridiculous word. If you have had an occasion in a school where you didn't feel a sense of belonging, share the reason why. Thank you, Venus, for starting us off always on the ball. Thank you, Venus. They don't see anyone that looks like them, Kira. Lack of representation, right? Go ahead and see. There's a lot more. Don't be limited. Not being included in the curriculum. Thank you, Antonique. The one-sided conversations, Viana. right? Educators who do not look like them. The system was built without their ideas, their identity, their conversations. Come on, give me more. Lack of, we have had representation already. There are tons of reasons, which I'm going to expose some of those tonight and show you, right? The standard of beauty in school, thank you. The lack of understanding, thank you, Salma. Being last to be chosen for activities. You may be surprised how major that one is. And I'm going to surprise you, Shayana, and maybe not surprise you, that goes into university, that goes into workspaces. The microaggression that happens, the disenfranchisement, the exclusion, the stealing of ideas, the elements in the school that says, I don't see you. So let me ask another question. Let's go on a different level now. Watch me carefully. Watch me carefully. I want you to jump in the chat, and thank you so much for the participation. Some of you are really on the ball. Type something for me, share something for me. I'm going to read the persons, who are watching the recording later, or if you watch the recording later, you could see. I want you to share something for me that gave you a sense of belonging, something, an indicator that allow you to know you belong to a school or to a university or to a space. Go ahead. What are those indicators that say to you, I belong? Thank you, Shayana. You're on the ball. Support from teachers. When you're being heard, seeing my friends, seeing Black faculty, the Black student clubs, the basketball team, a Black teacher that saw us as people. My 5th grade teacher was understanding and listened to our students. Give me some more indicators. Your name, thank you, Kathleen, being used, called for positive reasons, seeing an appreciation of Blackness, seeing your friends again, ability to speak up and speak your mind, to share your opinions are valid. Give me some more. There are a few persons who have not participated yet. Give me some more. Pronunciation of your name. Seeing representations of minorities in the curriculum. Thank you, Anar. Prayer spaces. Thank you. If you need to pray, pray. That's a big one. That prayer space, I'm going to tell you a story about that right now in a couple of minutes, so you understand how important what you just said. Okay. So Salma, you said prayer spaces. Okay. So I'm going to share something with you. I'm going to, I do a lot of storytelling. So I'm going to share a story with you. Let's get into my story right here. So I was teaching at a college, Salma, and I was asked to go to another branch, the private college, and to be the new director of education. When I went to the branch, I walked in the first day of my job, and I had 3 assistants, 3 secretaries, 3, education assistants. And one of them said to me, there is a letter on your desk, Mr. Campbell, from a lawyer. My first day at the job. But I remember I'm a part of the company, but first at this compound, at this campus. And I said, a lawyer? And, I was like, so when I looked at the letter, there's a group of students who the lawyer wrote to the school because of discrimination, because of exclusion. What happened was that this school had taken in a number of students who identify as Muslim. They wear the hijab. They are in the programs. They're in medical lab. I remember carefully. They were in early childhood education. They were in medical lab. They are in PSW. They were in addictions and mental health. I will never forget. And they asked for a classroom to use for prayer on our break. So the school had class from 9 to 12. We had a break from 12 to 1, and we had class from 1 to 4. And they asked for an empty room. The president at the time said to them, they cannot pray inside an empty classroom. And so, long story, he was fired. Not fired for that, just fired for many other reasons. So when I walked in and I saw the letter, I was shocked. So I called a meeting with the students, and they explained to me why the lawyer had to write the school. I sat in my chair. I've told the story many times. I'm sure you'll find this in one of my videos online. And I could not believe it. I could not believe that somebody would take 17,000, 15,000, 21,000. How do I know? I was the director of education. I know the school fee. You would take that amount of money from a student, knowing that person identity, knowing that person cultural context, and say, and by the way, you don't belong here, so you don't get to pray in the building. They weren't asking to pray in the middle of class. They weren't asking to interrupt the lecture so they could pray. They were asking for an empty classroom. And I turned to the group of students and I said, any room in the school that is empty when you need to pray, you can use, including my office. And I wasn't joking, including my office. And I said to them, if you think I'm not, I said, if you think I'm joking, test me one day out of the blues. If my office is empty, and ask if we could gather in there to use it just for prayer. And they smiled, they laughed, and we went away, never had an issue. Never had an issue. We never had a discussion again. So we have to be careful that these are some of the reasons. We have reasons that many of our students feel like they do not belong, like they are strangers, as the slide said, like they are interrupting something. So you did something very beautiful. I asked you all, remember, to list for me something that indicated to you that you belonged. Well, I want you to remember this and write this down. As many indicators that say you belong, there are many indicators that say to somebody else, you do not belong. And we have this not just in issues of religion and race. We have it in LGBTQ issues. We have it in physical abilities and disabilities. We have it in ageism and sexism and sizeism. We have it in so many things that's happening within our schools and within our spaces, within our organizations. So I want you to think about that. Now, for the agenda, we're going to have a quick conversation. I put this there for a reason. I want you to think about, I'm very big today on your personal reflection. Ask yourself, are there indicators in my own space, the space that I use, the space that I operate, maybe the space that you are responsible for, that say to students, you do not belong? There's one reason why I am recording this lecture this evening, the one next week, and the one on the 15th, because I know there are students who, because of certain reasons, cannot be at a class. That's for me making space. You may say, but Dr. Campbell, you didn't record any of the ones with the guest speakers, because I do not have permission to do that. So you have to also understand some of those technicalities and intricacies. But when you have that power to create that inclusion, that equity, your job is to do that. So we're examining the indicators of belonging, the theoretical context, and the idea of safe space. So I know a lot of us, we use that terminology a lot, a safe space. I'm going to surprise you. I do not like that word. You're saying, Dr. Campbell, what? You don't like the word safe space? What I like is safer space. Because what makes a space safe? It's not because of me. You know, I could put a sign on the door and say, here is a safe space, but safe for who? Safe space for who? The user have to say to me, how do I know this class was meaningful? Is when I read your evaluations and you say, Dr. Campbell, this class was meaningful. I felt this, I learned this, I did this, because you have found benefit. My job is to make sure that you find a value in a course like this. All right. And then the last thing I want us to do, if you notice, I put in red, because sometimes we come to these courses and we do this program as a student, and we feel, this is what I want you to listen to me carefully, that somehow the lecture that Dr. Campbell is giving, the lecture the guest speaker is giving, the knowledge our TA is sharing, is for when I graduate. No, it's for now. It's for now. It's for starting now. So I want you all to think about your own actions in creating intentional spaces of belonging. Let me give you an example. We have people right now fighting and having issues with people and their pronouns. If you hang out with a bunch of students and somebody comes in one day and said, you know what, I just want to share something very personal with you all. My pronouns are, I've changed my pronoun, and my pronouns are he and they. The way to be inclusive, the way to create a sense of belonging is simply learn to use that person's pronoun. That's it. You don't need to do nothing else. You don't need to buy them a gift. You don't need to give an award. You don't need to tell everybody to respect them. You don't need to have a protest and a march. You need to do nothing except you be intentional about inclusion. You be intentional about respect. You be intentional about and simple learn their pronoun. Those are the indicators of how we create sense of belonging. So one thing we have to remember in our schools, in our system, and one thing, if you're going to be an educator, you have to remember, and I keep reminding educators of this now, so you can imagine that people are still, having opportunities where they do not, let me put the transcript on, sorry, where they do not, right, get of those things, right? So I want you to understand the importance of you creating that inclusion, that climate. And one of those big things is to remember that one size does not fit all. You have to remember, one size does not fit all. What does that mean? See our students differently. See our students differently. See our students as individuals. One of the things that we do, we try to put clump and lump all Black people, racialized people together. Well, all these Muslims, all these Black people, all these immigrants, all these Caribbean, none of us is any one thing. And so we have to be respectful and understand the need to ensure we see each other as individuals, right? Another thing I want to point out here are, I want you to take a good look at this. What are some of those indicators of belonging? I want you to take a good look. Connections. A very big one for me is connections. And I created this graphic, connections. A very big one is trust. If you ask me right now, Salma, if you ask me right now, what is it that I think a lot of organizations who are doing anti-discriminatory work, anti-Black racism work, anti-racist work, anti-indigenous, all the work that they are doing to create equity, and they are not doing well, there is a lack of trust. There is a lack of trust because people do not feel safe, that word, safe, in spaces. People do not have trust. People do not feel a sense of belonging. People do not feel like a space is here for them. I'm sure you have heard the terminology a lot. A seat at the table. A lot of you have heard the terminology, a seat at the table, right? Belonging. What does a seat at the table really mean? When you say you give somebody a seat at the table, what does that mean? Next time I teach this course, I'm going to give, and I want an essay to be written on that. A seat at the table. What does that really mean? A seat at the table? Because giving you a space to sit beside me doesn't necessarily mean you have a seat at the table, right? If you are a part of that, thank you. Always on the ball. Thank you, Shayana. You have to be included. Your voice has to be heard. You have to get your chance to speak, to be heard. If I invite you to the table, but then nothing is served, you just waste your time. Can you imagine, Salma, I invite you to my house for dinner. You were like, yay, I'm going to go to Dr. Campbell house for dinner. When you went to my house, Salma, nothing that I serve, you eat. You're allergic. You did tell me all the things that you're allergic to. You did tell me what you don't eat, but you turn to my house and I'm serving you a meal and nothing is there for you to really eat and appreciate. But you're at my table. Waste of time. Waste of time. I have excluded you. Though you are physically present, I have been intentional about your exclusion. And this happens in many organizations. And that's why there's a lack of trust, the lack of inclusion. I'm going to skip relationship for a minute. Identity, getting to know persons. When we're talking about the indicators of belonging, somebody talk about religion. Somebody talk about knowing my name. Somebody talk about pronouncing my name. Identity, safety. That word again is back. It's back again. Safety. That says you belong here. I am feeling safe. I am feeling like I could talk. I feel like I could share. I feel like I could send Dr. Campbell an email and he would reply. And I can tell you, there's not one person in this class who have sent me an email and I've not replied. And if you have not gotten a reply from me, check your email and see if you send me the email. You have to feel that level of inclusion. How would Dr. Campbell not reply to my email? How would the TA not reply to my email? I am feeling like I'm not a part of this class. Membership. And then a major one, the one I put in the middle there, is relationship. Right? Relationship. And so I want you to understand, a big thing for us to do the work of inclusion, equity, belonging is relationship. And that is why we have a lot of people, listen to me carefully for this one, a lot of people trying to do anti-racist work and equity work, and they're trying to do disrupt and dismantle. You hear the terminologies, but they do not have any relationships out of that workshop. I want you to think about that. They have no relationship out of that workshop. There are people who have done workshops to do with anti-racist work and belonging work and inclusion work and diversity work. And you can sense that the only time they've interacted about this conversation with their colleagues, with their peers, with their co-workers is in the workshop, the 2-hour, the 1-hour talk. After it's done, there is no relationship. To get to know someone, you have to spend time with that person intentionally. It doesn't mean you have to go to their house or they have to come to your house. Even in your study group, you're all doing assignment together. Do you actually know each other's name? In the time when you meet that 1 hour to do the work, you should have conversation also that says, I get to know the person I'm with. What snack is that person eating? Oh, that person is drinking coffee. Wow, at 6 p.m. you drink coffee? It's a conversation. You get to know them. Or the person said, well, I'm going to take care of my baby. Oh, you're a mom. The person says yes. You know that kind of way? You get to know and respect and appreciate. When I do my interviews with my students are on practicum. And when they're on practicum and they share things, if they're online and I hear a baby crying, and I say, that's fine. It's fine. You're a mom. Let the baby cry in the background. If you bring the baby over here, whatever. I see people, their cat is walking behind them. I said, oh, well, they're a cat. You know what I'm saying? It's getting to know people and getting to understand who they are and bring them into your space. So like I said before, I want you all to understand that you have a responsibility to be intentional about creating a space of belonging. Belonging is a manifestation of deep connection. I love this quote. It's a manifestation of deep connection. That's how people get to feel like they belong. It's not a one-time little thing that you do to impress people, okay? And so if you remember long ago, maybe in elementary school, in kindergarten, many of us did activities that says which one does not belong. And so what I asked you at the beginning, I asked a bunch of students. I asked my own students 2 years ago. I said, have you ever been into a space or a place that you did not feel like you belong? What were the indicators? You already list those indicators. I'm just showing you now because I want to show you later on. I didn't want to put this at the beginning because I wanted you to share yours, and you shared. So there are many indicators, but I want to show you some of the things that my students 2 years ago said. Look at some of the things. You said many of these things as well. But I want you to know that not being acknowledged, treated as invisible, was quite popular. Quite popular. Not being acknowledged, treated as invisible was quite popular as an indicator. I want you to understand that. Feelings of inferior. Sometimes somebody will say, well, you're responsible for your feelings. Actually, not in this case, where you're in a space and someone is doing something that makes you feel inferior, makes you feel less than, makes you feel invalid, not as valued, not as a contributor, not belonging. So these are some of the indicators. There are more indicators. A very big one was the micro and the macroaggression, questioning and assumptions in order to have value. Heightened levels of security. That's a big one for racialized folks. A lot of us who are not Black do not understand do not understand. If you are not Black, you do not understand the heightened levels of security that happens when we go into certain spaces. We see it all the time. You know, you walk into a place and you can know when somebody says, when they ask, can I help you? When it means, can I really assist you? Or it simply means, well, you come inside, let me go watch you. Let me go watch you. We have seen tons of stories about that. An heightened sense of security. We have seen it happen. I've been to hotels and I've seen it happen, where all of a sudden, like, you're being policed, you're being surveilled, you're being watched. It happens a lot, and it happens a lot to Black, Indigenous, people of color, racialized people, where we are being surveilled. Any of you saw the video? Did you see the video of the incident in New Jersey in the mall? Anybody saw that video with the Black student fighting, with a Black and a white student fighting? And it's, well, it's there, you need to look at it. It's quite something else. And they're fighting in the mall. The police rushed in, and the police grabbed the white student, the white guy, and put him to sit, literally put him to sit. And he put his hands up. They even ignore that, put him to sit. And the other police throw the Black guy on the floor, kneel on him, and the other one went, both of them. And it's a big thing, it's all over the news. But the trick is, when I saw it, what thing for me was so profound was that was their first reaction. This is wired. This racism act is wired. The seeing black boys as criminals and Black bodies as threatening and need to be surveilled and attacked and policed and pushed aside and boxed in and controlled. It is innate. And so there's a big thing right now in New Jersey with the whole thing happening, because this was their response. The white guy was put to sit. And these things are happening all the time. But when they're caught on camera, everybody's, whoa, wow. Like, everybody's surprised. But this is how it happens. And remember, having a degree, having a PhD like me, being 6'4", having certain level of privilege that I walk in because I'm independent and I'm able-bodied, and I have privilege of title and letters behind my name and financial stability. That does not protect me from those things. I want you to understand that, because we have this, some of us have this weird idea that if I get a PhD, and when I have a PhD, and when I have a house, and when I have titles behind my name, you're not going to be able to have any of these racist acts happen to you. Ask the judge, they'll tell you. We have seen it in the news where the judge was seen as a criminal. We have seen many times. I've seen people who own big houses and they walk to their house, and the neighbor who see them and think, can I help you? And the person has to say, well, that's my house. I live there, I own it. Right? So Blackness, you walk. That's why when people say, oh, we're going to talk about race, you have to talk about race. There's one factor of your identity you cannot get away with. We are born raced. We come to university race. We go to the store and the mall race. We go to the airport race. We go to the hospital race. We go to get our vaccine race and get our COVID test race. We cannot get away from that identity, because it always seems to enter the room before we do. And people make assumptions about who we are and what we are. And so if you are not a Black person and you are not racialized, your job, your responsibility is to make sure you enact those changes that allow your students. So this is not about this conversation is for all of us. How do you create inclusion? How do you ensure that you sustain that space in your classroom when you become a teacher? When you become an educator, when you become a manager, supervisor, whatever area you're going to go in, how do you ensure that through your own actions, through your own leadership, you disrupt and dismantle those feelings, where racialized bodies, especially Black bodies, feel like they do not belong. Think about that. So no one, I love this quote from the same article we've been talking, I'm using. No one should have to spend a day in an environment where they do not feel safe. The lack of safety these students felt was partly due to the perceptions of their teachers, which contributes to a hostile school climate. There was a research being done about teachers who contributed to that hostile climate and culture that says you do not belong. That's why this course is so important for many of you who are going to end up in universities doing your teaching degree. I know some of you are looking to University of Toronto for your master's. I hope you do apply and come into that program. But we want you to understand that this is a reality. Whether you're a white teacher, a Black teacher, a racialized teacher, that your responsibility is to make sure you create a climate and a culture in your classroom that says to every single student, you belong. That is why I'm going to say something to you. That is why there is a thing where people feel like if you're on accommodation, you are less than. You are not. It's a culture that we need to work on, where because you are on accommodation, you are feeling embarrassed. I don't know if I've said it a million times, but I say to all my students, if you are on accommodation, there are many reasons why. My job is to accommodate you. And I'm not saying this to brag, but I've never questioned a student accommodation in my entire life. Never. Because my job is to accommodate. And accommodate isn't a bad word. Accommodate is actually a good word. Accommodate is making sure you're successful. Accommodate is giving you what you need so you can be amazing. Think about it if we see it like that. How our students who are on accommodation would feel safer, that word again, would feel more included, would feel like genuinely there's a seat in this class for me. But we have heard a lot of stories all over, of professors and lecturers and teachers who have made students on accommodation feel way less than. And so we have to we have to be intentional. That's why I'm pushing about individual accountability, your responsibility in this course, in this world, in the space you occupy, to ensure that you create a climate that is inclusive and a culture that is inclusive. So I'm just putting these questions here because I want to make sure they are there for our considerations. We have already discussed these things. Who determines who belong? Ask yourself that. Who determines who belong? The person who is seeking that sense of belonging. Many of us need to learn more. I go into these workshops about race, and somebody would say, this is how I felt when this happened. And somebody would step right in, especially a white person who is dominant and powerful and still don't know how to have that cultural humility in listening to the feelings of the person being expressed. But they say, well, maybe it's not racism. Maybe it was just a bad day. Always justified. Ask yourself, who determines who belong? The next question is, what does belonging look like here? What does belonging look like in your class, in your school, in your course, in your program, in your club, in your team, on your team, basketball team, dancing team, science team, STEM team, language team, debate team, swimming team, ballet team, African drumming team, whatever team you're a part of, French club, Spanish club, Asian club, whatever. What does belonging look like here, there? Ask yourself. How do we create safe spaces? And I put safe, of course, because the word I really want is safer spaces. Ask yourself that. So those questions are questions for you to ponder, just to think about. Because I guarantee when you go into other programs and other courses, you remember some of these conversations and you'll understand context. What I love about you all, and I mean this, the first class was so amazing. And so many of you were honest in that first reflection that you know nothing about this, but you are aware and you just want to grow. And I do hope that after this course when this course ends, yes, get your good grade. Amen. Get your good grade. But I hope you also walk away and you can say by yourself, not to me, but by yourself intentionally, I walk away with more knowledge. I walk away learning. I walk away unlearning. I walk away understanding some of my bias, some of the assumptions I hold, some of the stereotypes I've used, some of the things that I've done and seen and been a part of. The growth, personal growth for me is the win. The personal growth for me of each and every one of you is the win for me. So this slide is so ugly. I copied from something. It's ugly. All right. I don't like ugly. So but we're just talking about the same thing. The metaphor of the classroom as a safe space has emerged as a description of classroom climate that allows students to feel secure enough to take risks. So it's still talking about the idea that people need to feel a sense of belonging so they can take risks. And I hope you understand risks here doesn't mean, oh, let me do something dangerous. Risk here mean I'm going to raise my hand and ask Dr. Campbell a question. I'm going to go into this group with my two classmates because I know, the classroom climate and culture. We will work together respectfully. I am going to run late and I won't feel embarrassed when I step in the classroom late because I feel a sense of belonging. But I also do my part. Like I saw somebody come in here a couple of minutes ago, but that same person, I got an email saying that they will be a little bit late. That's the level of respect and community that student felt in this class. And some of us, we need to learn those kind of skills, that those kind of communication skills are important. Some of you don't show up, you show up when you feel like, and you think it's okay. It's not, because that is not cultivating a climate of belonging that we also want. So in wrapping up, I ask my same set of students, what is belonging for you? And if I want you to notice all the things, were the very first question you asked. So I put them at the back because I was intentional about that. I wanted you to say them first. And I want you to notice the same things keep coming up. The same things kept coming up. Connections were big. Empathy was big. Empathy was big. Positive energy was another major one. Flexibility. Anybody see the word representation? It's right there. Anybody see being and feeling heard? It's right there. Anybody see diversity reflected in the classroom? It's right there. This was answered about 2.5 years ago by my student. You said the same thing. I can show you tons of charts that I've used in workshop where people list the same things. It's funny how we all know the answers. It's really funny how we all know the answers, but we struggle in schools and in spaces to do the right thing. It's funny how if you ask us in a workshop, we know what belonging should look like, but it's not happening. And a lot of our Black students, it's not happening to them. I'm sure you hear a lot of conversation about de-streaming. I'm sure you all have your own story. As a matter of fact, and I'm being very honest about this one, well, I want to share with you. If any one of you have a streaming story you'd like to share with me privately, you rather write it down, let me know. Why? Because I'm doing a series of talks about why we are de-streaming and the value of de-streaming and why and how many of our Black students and racialized students and students who are immigrants and just off the plane and ESL students and students who speak different languages, were immediately streamed and how that streaming has impacted them. So I'm putting that invite out to you. If anybody wants to share a little paragraph with me with a story, I won't put your name, I'll put your initial there. I'm going to use it for a workshop. You could help me out. I mean that. Help me out, because what happens is that when you share your authentic story, it helps. I won't, of course, nobody will know it's you, but I love to use these real, genuine, authentic stories. So if you remember how you were streamed or something happened to you in high school because of how you were streamed and how you were treated, I would love to have your story. Send me an email and say, Dr. Campbell, I want to contribute to your work on this. And that story you shared me may even end up into a book chapter, because I want to collect stories from students who have experienced streaming. Tons of you have, and bad stories. I know that, right? So so there's a lot to talk about there. So streaming, that's something to Google, Salma. I know you, knowing you, Salma, you have already Googled it. But if you want, Salma, I can upload. If you send me an email, I can maybe upload and share with you a couple of articles about streaming. So we are de-streaming. And just so you know, Salma, your question is very powerful, because many of our racialized students, our Black students, have been impacted big time because of streaming, academic streaming in high schools. Yeah, academic / applied. Thank you, Gabrielle. And so this is a conversation to have. As a matter of fact, streaming is on the list of issues in school. I remember clearly. So maybe a group is even going to present on that. So I'll leave that there, okay? In wrapping up, I'm not going to do that slide. So here's something I really want to share with you. So this comes from a research. And this is from a research. And they were asked, the students were asked about the things that made them feel like belonging. Look at those things that came up again. Believe in us, listen to us, treat it with respect, keep feeling cared for, interaction with their educators, listen and understood. Listen to that. These are the quotes. Belonging at every level. You have to understand and appreciate what it feels like at every level. So this is what the students are saying. The last thing I'll share with you is Maslow need hierarchy. And I want us to think about that. Maslow need hierarchy. It's not new. The idea of belonging is not new. You see where belonging is, and many of you, I know you have done psychology and sociology. Look where Maslow needs says. Look at what comes under belonging: the psychological need, the physical, the basic needs, food, shelter, clothing, the need for safety, and then belonging. So ask yourself, even when our students are suffering, the issues of socioeconomic, the issues of happening with our families, when people are being marginalized and excluded, how will they feel a sense of belonging when those basic needs are not being met inside and outside of school? So we think about that. So the last thing I'll do, I'll leave this slide with you. Imagine, so we put belonging at the bottom of this graphic. Imagine all the things that can happen or will happen if belonging is the focus. If belonging is at the very center of what we do. If belonging is the foundation of us growing, us surviving, us thriving in schools. And just remember that this topic, I want to let you know context. This topic, I have done this tons of time because people have requested it. As a matter of fact, there's an article on Student Voice. I think I'm going to share those articles with you on Student Voice that I wrote for the Catholic magazine, and one for the Ontario Principal magazine, where the conversations were about belonging. This is not a conversation for us alone. It's a broad conversation that people are having about so many of our students who do not feel a sense of belonging. And because of that, they are not thriving in schools. They do not thrive. So we have to think about, how do we create sustain belonging in our school so that all our students can feel that sense of belonging. Because when belonging is a foundation, our students will thrive. All right. So that is it for us for this afternoon, for this evening. Next week, we're going to talk about introduction to anti-Black racism, from awareness to action. I'm going to share to you one of my presentation on introduction to anti-Black racism, go into some context there with us. And then the other week is our group. And then after that, I think it's going to be the week of the 22nd, right? We'll talk about disrupting anti-Black racism from within. The next week, we'll have a guest speaker talking to us about Black joy and from a hip-hop point of view. So that's going to be really, really good. Guest speaker from a hip-hop perspective. And the last class, we'll close on a lecture that Alyssa is working on with me and somebody else is working on with me, where we're going to do hashtag Black joy. We're going to close. Do not miss the last class. We're closing this class. Hashtag Black joy. All right. So thank you for that. Let me stop the recording now.